Watching Good Morning Nigeria. But before we begin our conversation on reopening of borders, let's take this background report by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
For some time now, the West African sub-region has been faced with some sorts of issues, which include coup in Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso, destabilizing democratic process in these countries. This led to sanctions being imposed on them by the ECOWAS member states, who frantically frowned at coups while demanding their return to democracy within a time frame. The sanctions imposed on these three countries obviously didn't go well with them, leading them to threatening to withdraw their membership from the regional bloc despite repeated efforts at reconciliation. The junta leaders of the three Sahel nations said in a joint statement that it was a sovereign decision to leave the ECOWAS without delay because the bloc has imposed inhumane sanctions against their countries. They accused ECOWAS of having moved away from the ideals of its founding fathers and Pan-Africanism after nearly 50 years of its establishment and claimed that the bloc is under the influence of foreign powers. However, on the 24th of February 2024, the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government lifted economic and financial sanctions against Guinea, Mali and Niger, with plans to re-examine the current approach to the quest for constitutional order in 4 of the coup-ridden member states. 18 days after this, the Nigerian president announced the opening of land and air borders with the Republic of Niger and the lifting of other sanctions. Consequently, the president has directed that the following sanctions imposed on the Republic of Niger be lifted immediately: closure of land and air borders between Nigeria and Niger Republic, as well as ECOWAS no-fly zone on all commercial flights to and from Niger Republic, suspension of all commercial and financial transactions between Nigeria and Niger, as well as a freeze of all service transactions, including utility services and electricity to the Niger Republic, freeze of assets of the Republic of Niger in ECOWAS central banks, and freeze of assets of the Republic of Niger state enterprises and parastatals in commercial banks. Suspension of Niger from all financial assistance and transactions with all financial institutions, particularly EBID and BOAD. Travel bans on government officials and their member states. Consequently, with these countries be willing to return now to the roundtable discussion? Also, after the lifting of these sanctions, what next? Is democracy in sight in Niger and other countries? Guests already seated in the studio will be answering these questions and more shortly.
Thanks, Oyeyemi Ajayi, and indeed we are set to get answers to those questions and more. Joining us here in the studio is Dr. Peter Iboaton, sociologist, fellow of Institute of Leadership, Manpower and Management Development, executive director of Reach Out Initiative for Vulnerable African Women, and lead person for Political Affairs, Democracy, Elections and Governance thematic group in WACSOF Nigeria chapter. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Nigerians,
caps, even though you have none now.
The caps are there.
All right, and also welcoming here in the studio, Dr. Emeka Okengo, a development economist. Welcome to have to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria.
I forgot to add farmer because you always want that. He's also a farmer.
Well, food producer would fit better now.
Oh, now, no longer farmer.
Okay.
Well, good
Pleasure.
to have you.
To have you as always. Yes, it's a pleasure to have you. We also have joining us Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, political economist. He's joining us via Zoom. It's nice seeing you. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, let's begin this conversation. Doc, borders are now open. What do you make of this? And what does it mean for Nigeria-Niger relations, for ECOWAS unity?
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's a sigh of relief for ECOWAS that we are setting the table to go back to negotiation. Of course, you know that Nigeria and the Niger Republic in 2022 had about 197 trade relations across the border. So closing the border is actually a problem to everybody, both Nigeria and Niger. So we have signed a big relief for that decision by ECOWAS. It's not Nigeria per se that closed the borders. It is ECOWAS. So now that they have thought of it and thought about opening it, I think we'll start from there.
All right. Thank you for your opening comments.
Yeah, I think we'll start from there. And let's bring in Dr. Emeka Okengo into this conversation, a development economist. And, you know, yesterday when the news came out that the sanctions have been lifted, most people were asking, is this a win-win situation for ECOWAS and Nigeria? Because a lot of people don't understand that it's ECOWAS that shut down the borders and not President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You know, there's sort of confusion there. But is there a win-win for ECOWAS here?
Well, the border is really open, because what has happened is that Nigeria has lifted its own end, has Niger lifted theirs. Remember, there's also a closure, border closure announced by Niger, a counter closure, as it were. And then who benefits more from this border, you know, being closed by Niger? Because what it means is that for those who are flying international, the Niger route is the easiest or closest you can, you know, into Europe. So it's still not Uhuru. That's the point I'm trying to make. Until we get that reciprocity from, you know, Niger, and then we're ready to go. And remember that you're not just talking about opening a border and talking about ECOWAS. Niger has officially pulled out of ECOWAS. So we're no longer talking about ECOWAS now. All right, so these negotiations has now to be between Niger and Nigeria as two independent countries. Now, if you want to drill this down a little further, the first question will be, why did you close the borders in the first place? What were we supposed to be achieving? What did you achieve on closing those borders? So if you're going to be moving forward and saying sigh of relief, okay, were there cohesion, were there secession, were there, what are we trying to fight? What are we trying to protect? Because if you don't identify those things you are trying to protect, and then you wake up and say, okay, the borders are open, business as usual, it doesn't work that way in international diplomacy, unfortunately.
Well, if you want to, you know, you asked who benefits more. Now we look at the relations between Nigeria and Niger, and you know, Nigeria has been Niger's trading partners, biggest trading partners for quite some time, with $193 million worth of goods to Niger in 2022. With that, would you say that Niger loses more or Nigeria gains? Because while you are earning the money, you are providing them needs. And that's why it was quite painful from their own perspective to say, look, Nigeria could do this to us and all of that. So who gains more?
Good narrative coming from you as Nigeria. But let me also tell you that 80% of the rice, foreign rice that you're bringing into this country comes from that route. Let me also tell you that over 70%, you know,
cattle
of comes in there. Let me also say to you that, you know, Niger is a very major trade route for us, which was why there was a national consideration to build a train line. And I'm not talking about the automobile industry, I'm not talking about other commodities. So it would be good to hear those things you're taking, you know, to them. Okay, that might not be within, you know, the petrol and petrochemicals, you know, areas. So sometimes in balancing trade, it's not about, you know, that big thing you think you're giving. I mean, without giving those things, they've survived for 8 months. They've gotten independent, they've gotten stable, they've gotten more confident. They no longer look at you as a big brother, okay, and they've called your bluff. That's the point I think all of us must understand. So we shouldn't be saying, oh, little brother, because from the way you're looking at it now, okay, yes, I beat my younger brother, you know, he misbehaved and I think I've reset his code. He should be excited and happy, you know, that I'm no longer angry with him. But you're no longer In that 8 months that you beat your little brother, he's grown into something else. He's going to become independent of you. And then, please also do a check on what you are losing, to the aviation industry vis-a-vis the transfer cost to people who will now need to fly longer distances, to keep away from the Niger airspace. So that's what's critical. If you're thinking about, I'd like to know those things, apart from electricity, apart from probably, petroleum products that we're really, trading with Niger.
Well, if you probably this and probably that, those are
please
big things.
get those things. It will be interesting to know them.
But I think it's good. I think it's good to be, even as humans, to be at peace with one's neighbors. That said, but Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, who's joined us via Zoom, he is the political economist, and I would like to find out from you, in political terms, what does the reopening of the Niger border mean for Nigeria and for ECOWAS?
For the surface value of the reopening of the border, it shows that ECOWAS is ready to dialogue. ECOWAS is willing to listen to those three countries. Remember that ECOWAS started out from the point of threat of invasion, closure of borders, financial exclusion, and so on and so forth. And as my older brother, Mr. Okengu said, they caught the bluff of ECOWAS. And I said, when that very particular incident happened, what I said was that the joke is on Nigeria and ECOWAS, because they are a step ahead of ECOWAS. By declaring that they are no longer members of ECOWAS, they're taking the diplomacy and everything related to the issue of restoration of constitutional order to another level. Now, what we're talking about is normalization of relationship between these countries and ECOWAS. Instead of discussing when will democracy return to these countries, we show that whoever is the advisor, whoever is the thinker behind what they're doing is very strategic, and they've inflicted strategic pain on ECOWAS, because what ECOWAS wanted to do was to muzzle them as if they are some sort of local government under ECOWAS. And they resisted it by saying that, look, we're a sovereign nation and we have our own decisions to make based on our interests. So if what we're doing is not appealing to you and is appealing to our people and we have the support of our people, go to hell. And that was the situation. I think we should contextualize this particular discussion by apportioning accolades to whoever is due to receive them. I must congratulate General Gowon as one of the surviving founding fathers for wading into the crisis to say, look, if you want to have any headway, you don't just impose sanctions on the people, on a nation that is sovereign, and you think that those nations will come begging. What needed to be done is to make sure that these sanctions are entirely taken away, and then we can start discussion from there. And I think that is what we are seeing. But then there is something that I want us to consider, what I would call cautious optimism. What do I mean by that? While we are here saying that the borders have been opened, the Nigerian junta, Mali, and Burkina Faso, are they really, really willing to return back to ECOWAS based on what they've seen, based on the threat they've received? And for the fact that if you listen carefully to the head of the junta in Niger, the narrative out there is that ECOWAS is doing the biddings of France, and that ECOWAS has deviated from its Pan-African status of championing cooperation, trade, and then promoting free movement of goods and services across borders to doing the biddings of France. And with that, I'm sure the damage has been done. So what we are likely to see is at what point and at what rate, in terms of the degree of acceptance that will bring these people back to the fold of ECOWAS. And are they willing to come back to ECOWAS? Since they said ECOWAS is doing the biddings of France.
Yeah, but I'm still going to stay with you there. You know, Mr. Emeka Okengo said that between the dialogue now is between, you know, Nigeria and Niger as two independent countries. And the question he asks is, have Niger opened their borders, you know? In the first place, there's conversations that the sanctions shouldn't have happened in the first place. The call for military action against Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali shouldn't have happened in the first place. I've read a lot of your write-ups on issues like this, and I believe you're a proponent of saying that there should have been no sanctions in the first place. And now ECOWAS is backtracking. What message is this sending to other African countries who think, well, we can have a coup and get away with it too?
Coup is forbidden. At a point in Nigeria, it was coup that brought constitutional order to Nigeria. When things were messed up, it was the military that stepped up. And whatever the politicians who in this country is the military that usually come to reset the process. The constitution we are talking about today, who gave us the constitution? Was it the politicians? And now, you see, let us get something very straight. According to Lord Acton, he said it's not the system of government that matters. It is the welfare of the people under such a government. I can't remember China practicing multi-party democracy, but the people are doing better. In Rwanda, the same thing. It all depends on what is what for the people. We're not saying that if people wanted a constitutional order, they should not be given. It has to be the demand of the people. And now, considering these countries that we're talking about, these are countries that have been in poverty, that have been in the name of constitutional democracy. These countries have been in crisis, from poverty to insurgency to massive killings, and the politicians are not stepping matters. And stepped up. Now, what has been happening in Africa is that the politicians create problems for the military to confront. And it's still the same thing that is happening. From 1999 to date in Nigeria, we're facing insurgency, we're facing banditry, we're facing all sorts of criminal happenings in this country, just like across sub-Saharan Africa. And now, the military have come to say, okay, we want to restore order, and we need time to do that, and the people are not complaining. This is my point. If I did mean they took away power and the people are protesting, they needed outsider mediation to restore constitutional order, I think for me, it is the voice of the people, and we will support that. But the people are even jubilating. Look at what is happening in Senegal. You took power without any resistance from Abdoulaye Wade, and then from what we're saying, you want to extend your tenure, and the people are saying, no, we can't extend your tenure, we won't allow that, and the people are on the street protesting. So you don't create problems, and you now said that the people are the problem or the military are the problem. This is one point we needed to get. And then for ECOWAS, what I had wanted ECOWAS to do was to, okay, listen to these people carefully, engage the junta, engage the people, let them see the need to restore constitutional order. And as you rightly asked from the studio, who is benefiting the more in terms of the relationship between Nigeria and Niger? Remember, Niger is a very strategic location in sub-Saharan Africa, considering where we are placed. From River Niger, where we are getting our electricity, to the grains, to the our protein requirement in terms of animals, to equally fighting the insurgency and the free flow of small weapons and light weapons into this country. So Niger is a very strategic partner in the overall fight against insecurity. And then you cannot strategically cause those kind of people pains by saying that you want to restore constitutional order. And then at what expense? If today the Nigerians decided that they are no longer going to join Nigeria to fight against the insurgency, I bet you the little peace we are enjoying in the Northeast will be taken away from us. So Niger is very strategic, and that is why we are saying that, look, no matter what we want to do, let it be under ECOWAS. But when it became obvious that Nigeria is preparing to invade Niger, and then people started screaming, no, you can't do this, then it means that there is a axe to grind from Nigeria's side against Niger than within ECOWAS. If all of this happened within ECOWAS, nobody would have been able, because we have traditional relationship to protect between us and Niger. If not for colonial incursion, there was no boundary between Niger and Nigeria as it were, especially in northern Nigeria.
Dr. Hamisu, I'm tempted to stay with you on this. The decisions that were taken by Nigeria were in obedience to ECOWAS. It just happens so that Nigeria leads ECOWAS at this particular time. Is there anything extra outside what was decided by ECOWAS?
I couldn't differentiate between what Nigeria was doing and what ECOWAS was doing. Remember, it was Nigerian government it was widely reported that mooted the idea of invading Niger. I didn't get that from ECOWAS. But in terms of sanctions, yeah. And maybe I wanted to say this, and I've said it severally, that the president must have acted based on the fact that he was relatively new in office. He did not understand most of these things that, okay, there is a clear distinction between the president of Nigeria talking and talking under the authority of ECOWAS. So if he had spoken that ECOWAS will be, all decision was taken at the level of ECOWAS to invade Niger, that would have been a different thing. But when he spoke as the president of Nigeria, saying that Niger needed to be invaded, then he's acting as the president of Nigeria, not the authority that is embodying. So these are some of the blunders that were committed earlier on that we were saying was not supposed to be there. Because if there is anything, Nigeria ought to be the diplomatic back channel to resolve the crisis, because we stand to lose in terms of what is happening than gaining from the sanctions and everything.
We'll get back here in the studio, and let me go to Dr. Peter Ibuato. You are a sociologist. How do we take this forward with regards to relations? Now, I'm not talking more of ECOWAS now, but Nigeria-Niger strained relations. How do we take this forward to restore the relations, if not make it better, if not improve it, but restore it to the pre-sanction era?
Well, you understand that this is not the first time ECOWAS is facing this kind of situation, withdrawal. There are international laws around it that must be obeyed. Though ECOWAS has their own points too, and Niger has their own points too. And they have formed an alliance, Alliance Sahel states with Mali and Burkina Faso. So when you factor all this in, you will see that they are on a negotiating table with power. They are not coming from, I beg you, point of view. They are coming with power. So we must listen to them. We must find a place where we can meet. Once there's a willing buyer and there's a willing seller, they must meet at a point. So for now, going forward, Nigeria must find a way, because we are the chair of ECOWAS. Even though the ECOWAS heads of state takes decisions, but we are the chair. We must find a way to resolve these challenges, in the sense that what happened to Mauritania, there's always 1 year. 1 year after you have tendered your letter of withdrawal, you must wait for 1 year before you are withdrawn. But Mali, when they are now said,
in other words, they are still in the process.
They are still. They say they are not going to wait. They say they are not going to wait.
Theirs was instanter.
Yes, they say they are not going to wait. But that is against the international law. So we must bring. I know that I'm not a lawyer, but the international lawyers are deliberating on that, and they must take a decision. At the worst, they will go to International Court of Justice and sort it out there. But you must obey and be abiding by the things you've signed. You don't just say, okay, you are Upper Volta, then we understand. When ECOWAS was formed, you are now Mali, Niger is. So we must understand that those things are binding because you are aware. It's not as if you are not aware. You are aware of these rules and these treaties. You must abide by them. So going forward, apart from the economic politics that's going on, Russia wants to enter into West Africa, and they are coming through these francophone countries. You understand? We understand that. France doesn't want to give up what they owe. Remember, Niger is one of the exporters of uranium. And everybody wants this for nuclear, for cancer treatment and all that. So it is important that we treat them with care. We don't just say, they are my junior brothers. They have power now. And brothers said it, they have power. And because they have power, you must listen to them. But it also means that if you, Winston Churchill once said that democracy is the worst form of government, but only those governments that we have tried. In other words, that is the best that we have tried. Except the governments that we have tried, democracy is still the worst. So if they have found something better for Africa, they should come up with those things and sit down with their brothers. We are all brothers. From Castina to Niger is about 162 kilometers. But women are suffering. Women carry their children at the back and walk that distance. You can imagine the distance because of this border closure. Now that it has been lifted, everybody is benefiting. Nobody, it's not just economic. Some of us, yeah, you might say that they have targeted the government, but everybody along the borderline is suffering. Taxi drivers, people that are earning, that's why there's issue of security around that area. So my suggestion is let us calm down, be calming down. Somehow, yes, be coming down. Somehow we'll get over this.
You said that now that the borders have been opened and things will be easier. But like Dr. Emeka said, has Nigeria opened her borders? How easy is it going to be?
It is all semantics. Nigeria will open their border. We are brothers.
I don't want to imagine that, for instance, vehicles are now going into Nigeria and none is coming in.
None is coming in.
I'm not sure
The
that's
truth
the case.
of the matter is that Nigerians along that border have relatives over the other side. You are closing border, it's just semantics. They are brothers. They are relations. So, some women were traveling to the other side for a wedding. The other ones were coming to this side for a wedding. So how are you going to stop them?
Yeah. You know, in some places in Kebbi State, it's just like between this table and the other side.
Yeah.
This is Nigeria.
The other side is...
The other side is Nigeria. People have wives and children on the other side just to cross, you know. It's like Abu Amis would say, it's a one country before colonialism came in and they separated, you know, Africa. And some people are saying that Africa is being recolonized again, you know, with Russia coming into the play, which they were not there before. But Dr. Emeka, I want to talk from the economic point of view now. You know, there are so many dotted, you know, signatures on dotted lines, you know, agreements between Nigeria and Niger and, you know, the ECOWAS sub-region on the Africa Free Trade Agreement. You also talked about the rail line that is going to pass through Niger all the way to Morocco and the oil pipelines. You know, it's a lot on the table. What happens now?
Did you think about those things when we were taking that decision?
Well, we are here now.
No, hold. You know, because it's important. If you don't know where the rain started beating you, you know, solving, you just don't wake up in the morning and say it's over. I mean, it's like you start giving your wife, you know, attitude in the house. And one morning you just wake up and say, oh, honey, I love you. And then you expect her to open her hands and then hug you. All right? That's not how it runs. Remember that we're not talking about 8 months. We just woke up one morning, gave the reasons of insecurity, gave the reasons of protecting our local industries, gave the reasons, all that, and we closed our borders. Remember that that's how that started, before we got to the point of sanctions. Okay? Remember also that at the point in time that happened, you know, we didn't remember the word, the Economic Community of West African States. If we did, there was no note verbal, you know, to Niger, okay, alerting them of that decision. I don't know about any, except it was done, you know, through backyard diplomacy. Now, you asked me to take it from the economic perspective, so I'll be taking it from the politics of international economic relations. And what will come to bear will be BRICS. Okay, there's a new sheriff in town, there's a new currency in town, and that currency is called the ruble. And please go and check this out. By the time they're launching that currency, I think by April or so, 1 ruble is going to has a value of about $50. It's also going to be having about a value about 40, you know, great British pounds. Now, this ruble is going to be jointly, you know, operated by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, that's the new world economic order. And let me also say to you that since Niger, kicked technically France out of Niger, Niger has become the 7th or so, fastest growing economy. They have become one of the biggest, traders in uranium. Their economy has burgeoned out of, and to the extent that, please check the CFA against the dollar. We are smuggling food to go and sell in Niger to make more money because the CFA has more value than the Nigerian naira. So this is the people you're lifting sanctions and you're expecting them to be shooting the guns in the air. My brother talked about obeying international laws and treaties. Did we obey it when we first drew the first blood? Did you think about the consequences? And now, these 3 countries have come together. Remember that when they were pulling out of ECOWAS, Niger didn't pull out alone. Okay? Mali was on that table. Burkina Faso was on that table. Senegal is gearing to go. Chad is very willing to join. Okay? Benin is willing ever to join. And everybody is now going towards this new money. So when you talked about recolonization, what deals are you getting? Now, you cannot be talking about recolonization. You should be talking about diplomatic relations. Okay? When the young man from Burkina Faso, went to Russia, he was given full presidential, respect and courtesies. And look at what he's doing in his country. He doesn't go around. He walks around the streets of Burkina Faso. He's been able to do what they haven't done in the mining industry, value chain, from technologies developed, in Burkina Faso. So Africa is emerging, okay? And it is time we begin to rethink, okay, our relations with our brothers. Like you said, yes. I mean, you didn't include the Jigawa inside that loop, all right? Jigawa, this is just the Sahel region, and it's even being blurred more by desertification. I mean, the desertification has created so much of forced migration that you don't even know who's coming from where. Okay, you have about 40 million people and about the same, number of beasts, coming in on forced migration from all across, that Sahel region. And remember that all of them aggregated, around the Great Lakes, the Lake Chad. This is the aggregation point. This is that cultural, this is that historical, this is where everybody begins to take their livelihood from. All these countries dependent, largely on Lake Chad for their survival, and that was the link. So point I'm trying to make is, as much as, yes, we want to first commend the president. It's important because, I keep saying this, since he took office, he's been taking what people will call very tough, decisions. But for me, very enduring. Time we would celebrate him for removing fuel subsidy. Time we celebrate him for lifting this, essential. At least that's the first step. And let's not forget that this country bluffed us, bluffed the best we could send. I mean, we sent, if the news is anything to believe, General Abdul Salam, who was the former head of state, went there and got rebuffed. Okay, he didn't as much as, spend more than 5 minutes there. Ditto, for even, the former Emir of Kano, who, out of respect, because they had a personal relationship for him, said they were going to be speaking to him because they had very personal relationship for him. I mean, these people no longer see you. And like I said to you, one of the worst things you don't do is that guy who looks up to you, okay, and believes that he can't survive without you. And you've listed, my brother, Dr. Obia, to the kind of things. I mean, from power, the day we start talking about flooding, if those guys wanted to retaliate, we would have lost a lot of, our places in the Niger Delta by just releasing of only water. Okay, we're not talking about just only the trade alone. Okay, we're also talking about the fact that insurrections and insurgencies that we are supposed to, be fighting, they are very critical for us to be able to make certain that, we protect those borders and then make them not as porous as they are vis-a-vis the inconscience of people. So, not to take this conversation too far and to take it over, you asked the question, economic implications of these people not being there. let us pray that this is resolved before they get into BRICS. If they do, for whatever reasons, get into BRICS, for whatever it is worth, I'm telling Nigeria this, it will be one very huge hole, okay, in our development structure.
All right, Dr. Kengu, thank you very much.
Just a little
okay.
You understand that there's no winner in all this. All of us are losers. Even Niger is a bigger loser. Last year, they cut their budget by 40% because of these sanctions. Nigeria placed them on ECOWAS now, placed them on sanction. Americans placed them on sanction. Europe placed them on sanction. So, are you going to be an island to yourself because you have some uranium?
They stop them from selling their uranium.
Yeah, from their uranium.
What's the value of the Niger currency now?
The point I'm making is that nobody lives like an island. Mm-hmm. You need your people. If they are making so much from uranium, why they cut their budget by 40%?
Please go and look why. You see, most of these budgets you cut. This maybe we should have this after we leave the studio.
That's almost 50%.
Perhaps.
That's almost 50%.
Don't go there because so that we don't bring also the Nigerian.
No, it's because sanction is part of it.
We are trying to look forward, and that's why I want to go to Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, who's joined us via Zoom. Dr. Hamisu, what are the feelers that we already have? It may be early days, but what are the feelers that we get from Niger? What is likely to be their reaction to the latest development?
So average Nigerians is a welcome development. So average Nigerian is a welcome development because there is what we need to know about our trade relations with Niger. Niger supply us with most of the agricultural products that we need, and because Niger is a landlocked country, they rely on our ports for importation. So it goes this way: from Niger through Katsina State or Jigawa State, they are able to supply Kano market, and from Kano as a center, you could take your goods to Lagos, Port Harcourt, Enugu, and all the southern states. And then by the time they get there, they equally get imported goods back into Niger, including Chad and Cameroon. This is how it operates. Now, one of the things, when we say that Niger will suffer, I don't know what we mean by Niger will suffer. Today, as my brother pointed out, Mr. Okengu, that goods are being smuggled into Niger. That is the situation. Now, let us get something very straight. Nigerians are very, very well organized more than Nigerians. In terms of corruption and abuse, we are ahead of Nigerians. So smuggling across borders, and that is why we are paying high prices for rice, we are paying high prices for other grains in Nigeria. Apart from the fact that the one in Niger is not coming into Nigeria, Nigerians are now smuggling these very particular goods into Niger and then using it as a route. Now, you don't toy around with somebody that is coming from the position of strength. As it is now, Nigerians have the junta in Niger has more leverage compared to Nigeria. The first is that they've made new friends, new allies. There is a seeming improvement in the quality of the life of the people of Niger. Thirdly, they've caught the bluff of Nigeria. They formed their own alliance, and then they have new international partners. And this is linked to the broader politics that Mr. Okengu was talking about. Now, when you are hooked to a particular group of people and you think that salvation lies there, and these people now show you that you can't get salvation under us, in fact, we are going to give you hell. And you decided from day one that I'm not going to accept hell, that I was going to look for paradise. And then you find the paradise elsewhere. And then the person that wants to give you hell is saying that you should come back to the hell. How would you react to that? That is exactly the reaction we are talking about that we are yet to see from Niger. And even if Niger is going to accept this overture, they are going to take it with more or less a pinch of salt, what I choose to call cautious optimism. Yeah, they will be optimistic, but they have to be cautious again because they don't know if it's another booby trap that they are bringing them back. So the first thing we should hope for is that Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali accept to return to ECOWAS. If they refuse to return to ECOWAS, I think that is the beginning of the end of the entire conversation, whether Nigeria or ECOWAS decide to eliminate the sanctions or not. But if, based on the interventions, reasons prevail, and we're able to convince them that we're not doing the biddings of France, and that we don't want to return the people of Nigeria to poverty, and that we meant well, then we can be able to talk. If not, look, they have a lot of leverages in terms of, one, our fight against insurgency. You talk about failure, so let me come to that. Our fight against insurgency, remember there was a time our military have to run into Niger. Niger have to escort them back to Nigeria. And there is no corruption in Nigerian military compared to what we'll be witnessing in Nigeria. In terms of fight against insurgency, they'll be more efficient, and they've been providing that support. In terms of the fight against the smuggling of light weapons in Nigeria, Niger is highly strategic. In terms of power, if today Niger decided to dam River Niger, we are dammed in Nigeria, we will not get that. Presently, we are grappling with power outages and shortages. And then there was an agreement in the 60s that Niger will not dam River Niger so that we can have enough water to dam for electricity. And in return, we'll be giving them electricity. That was the agreement that was truncated because we want to return constitutional order. So what did we do? We shut electricity supply to Niger. So if today, through the instrumentality of Russia or any other player, they decided to dam River Niger in Niger, then we will not have the volume of water required to power our electricity generation. You talk about food, it's a two-way thing. We have food that are going into Niger from Nigeria, and we have food that are coming from Nigeria. But overall, and that is why it was mentioned that railway was built into Niger. For those that do not understand it, they will think that it is just a charity. No. Most of the animals that we are consuming, from cattle to sheep to goats to whatever, they are all coming from Niger. If you talk about social relationships, in terms of marriages, in terms of, look, most of the traditional institutions in northern Nigeria are linked to the traditional institution in Niger. So there are intermarriages, and that is why you find a lot of people crossing borders from Niger to Nigeria, Nigeria to Niger, as if somebody is leaving AYA to central area or central area to AYA. So all of this put together, we cannot and we should never antagonize Niger interests. We're not saying that if there is anything to be resolved, we should be afraid of Niger. No, I'm not saying that. But in terms of protection of interest, we should be mutual, so that we will not take actions that will destroy these relationships that have been built by our forefathers that have taken us to where we are now. Because if we do, honestly, the consequences will be damning. Because we are the ones that are suffering insecurity, not Niger. We are the ones that are suffering food shortages now, high inflation in food prices. We are the ones that are suffering all sorts of challenges. So we can't antagonize our strategic partners in the Sahel.
Abu Hamisu, thank you very much. Just to say that I'm not sure and I'm not aware that there is any instrument used to measure the level of corruption in the Niger army, the Nigerian army, and that in the Nigerian army, that we can say clearly that, oh, this is more corrupt than that. Jumai?
Yes, he raised a lot of pertinent questions, and I would like to bring in Dr. Peter Obuatu into the conversation. Saying you don't agree with some of the views of some of the speakers here, but the fundamental question is, what if? What if they refuse to come back to the negotiating table? What if? What's going to happen?
The point is that it's not that I don't agree with them, but we don't give power to Niger over Nigeria. Nigeria has their own power too. We are not coming with empty hands. They have mentioned them. We give them some things, they give us some things. It's a mutual respect.
It's rub my back,
Yes. So, if we must agree and come back to negotiating table. Niger and Mali and Burkina Faso are not coming from lesser power. They are coming with their own power and their own interest. There's no doubt that ECOWAS need to work on themselves. There's no doubt. But if you think that you have found the answer, a government that is better than democracy, then bring it to the table. That's why we have a treaty. That's why we are brothers. You don't just say, oh, you are ECOWAS, then go. No. They have started. I am sure that Gowon, who intervened, will surely still continue to intervene. So they will come back to negotiating. And that's what we are looking for. It would be stupid of them to say, Nigeria, go to blazes, because you are going to open your water system and then flood River Niger.
Do you think that's the body language of Niger?
It's beginning to look like that, because they are calling us
early days. It's early days. It's just this happened just 2 days ago. But diplomacy has continued.
Yes.
So you still expect that it will take some time.
It will take some time. It will mature.
Find some balance here and there.
Yes, sure. Because if you think otherwise, why are they coming back? Why are they opening up to negotiate? They cannot close negotiation. The negotiating table is there. It's what you bring to the table and what I bring to the table where we find solution. Even if you pull down this house, even if we are fighting and we pull down this house, me and you will still sit down and plan on how to rebuild it. So irrespective of what has happened in the past, going forward, we must sit down as brothers and sort our problems. Nobody who will say we don't have problems. ECOWAS has their problems. Mauritania once complained and pulled out and joined one Arab organization. So this is the second time. So we must look at ourselves and say, okay, what is wrong? Is it this over control by Francophone countries, by France, or other colonial powers? Or is it this imperialism? How do we get out of it? Maybe Russia might be a better solution. But let's go and negotiate with power, because there's power in unity. There's power in them bringing what they have, we bringing what we have. We'll go and negotiate with the third party. That's the point.
And regardless of where power lies, Dr. Kengu, I'm not sure if you won't agree with me that you need your neighbors. You need your neighbors, because in times of crisis, the closest people to you, even as an individual, are those who live around you. You may have one powerful relation somewhere who is far away, and maybe before he or she gets to you, well, the worst has happened.
Well, there's what they call the think through attitude. Okay, before you do anything, you think it through. Okay, and that gives even the least. I remember when I joined the civil service a long time ago, the first talk I had with my father said to me, the most important person in your office work when you get to the office is the clerk and the messenger. Okay? In your house is your cook and your gate man. Treat them right. You will live very long. Now, these are people that we'll call house helps, domestic staff, lesser than us. But they're the most important people. They're the people who can destroy you so easily. Now, let us now try to now put it in this thing we're talking about with Niger Republic. My brother in Kaduna had put it very, very clearly that in signing that pact in damming the River Niger, a lot of people do not know that if you dam the River Niger, it is not only the power sector that is going to affect. Okay? You are going to be taking the whole of the Niger Delta into the sea. It will disappear. In fact, even with the little dams are doing, a lot of communities, about 13, 14 communities, are no longer existing in the Niger Delta. They have been swept into the sea. Please fact check this. So we are not talking about, our neighbors like you say. Okay, you should think, but you should have thought about the neighbor before you take some very extremist. And that's why I'm saying the president has done well. He started that first. I think the second thing now would, let's not go there with a lot of, okay, right, we've opened the borders, reciprocate it. No, we need to, massage some ego.
Renegotiate some terms.
Massage ego, and then say, okay, we are brothers, mistakes that have been made in the past, A, B, C, D needs to be corrected. Let me also even digress a little bit and talk about, the ECOWAS currency. What scuttled it? At the point in time, they were talking about getting to that convergence point where they were not going to be having a single currency. France went and got one of these francophone countries to introduce, a local currency. That's what scattered the ECOWAS single currency. Please also go and read it up. So sometimes when you're talking about alignments and you're talking about, you use the word colonization. No. Okay, at this stage now, what you're looking for are new, economic development partners. And why I mentioned the BRICS is that I want you to also now read up the BRICS and read up the ruble. Now, the ruble got very powerful at the point in time the world moved against Russia. And what did Russia do? Russia said, okay, if we're no longer going to be discounting, our goods and services against any other currency, that is not the Russian ruble. Find it if you want to buy from us. Today, the ruble is going to be kicking the dollar very, very hard in the butt. So point I'm trying to make is that if we're going to be forming an African Union, look at what's happening in the SADC region. Okay, we should be talking to the SADC people and see what they have done. Okay, if we're going to be creating this economic bloc, there has to be chains that can be able to link it. And those chains won't be, we are like every Nigerian, Niger. But look at the statistics that we're rolling out now. A lot of the food you eat come from there. A lot of the meat you eat, you're Muslim Hajjah. I have made this argument, in a forum. I say, okay, please show me one farm in Nigeria that has 10,000 ram. One. Yet on a daily, just between 2 days cycle, at least 80 million of those animals are slaughtered. Where do they come from? 80% of them come from that Sahel, region. From between Niger, Mali, Sudan, Burkina, that's where they come from. So there is so much we can get. Yes, President has done well by lifting the sanction. I would suggest that he takes a state visit to Niger. Let him not wait for Niger to come to say, this doesn't happen under me. At the point in time I took that decision, I needed to take it because, that's what the law requires for me to do. Okay, I think it's time for us to be able to sit down. Now, you are my younger brother, let's talk one-on-one. If he does that, okay, I think that will not give him impetus. Let him even go to Burkina Faso. Let him even go to Mali. President Tinubu is respected, within the region. He's a chairman. He can say, okay, fine, I'm here on a private visit, but as chairman of ECOWAS, let's have, and it's, no press, okay, let me sit down and talk with you. Brother, what is this thing? He might be able to be better guided. That would be my thoughts.
Okay, Dr. Emeka Okwengu, I'm sure, I've always said it on this platform that the president watches this program, he listens to what, to advice from discussants, and I'm sure he's listening, and we hope that he will take the advice you've just given. We'll take a break now. When we return, conversation will begin to wind up, and we'll begin to ask pertinent questions on how far the lifting of the border with Niger will take. You're welcome back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. We've been discussing the lifting of sanctions and opening of borders with Niger Republic by ECOWAS, and our guests are still seated here in the studio. Let's bring in Dr. Peter Obuatu. We talked about bringing them back to the negotiating table so that the talks will begin. And what Dr. Emeka Okwengu said, they are coming on strong because they are backed by natural resources like uranium, which the whole world needs, and Russia is, edging into these countries that we have because of what they have and what they can offer to Russia and what Russia can offer to them. It's like if there's a paradigm shift in foreign policy around the world. That's how you take it.
Yeah, that's very correct. The world is changing from what we used to know to a new world. America is no longer going to be as powerful as they are in the next 20 years because of challenges here and there. France will not be as powerful. So the sooner they understand this, the better. But Africa now, not just ECOWAS, must have a plan to position themselves for the new world, because it looks like Africa is attracting a lot of foreign interests. So Russia is there, BRICS are there, China is there. As China, they are coming strong, and all of them are focused on Africa. So we must understand that what our brothers have seen is true. And when we are going back to the negotiating table, we don't go with that kind of attitude that, no, I'm going to call you bluff. No. We have to come as brothers and discuss. I thank God for Gowon, because when they sit and talk, it's a new world they are talking about. I am not of the opinion that they too will come with a braggadocious attitude that you are nothing, you are fading away. No, we have our own points too. So when we come together, we table it. It's not about democracy now. There might be a better government to come. Better, just like Winston Churchill said, there might be a better government to come. But for now, this is what we're talking about. What is on the negotiating table? Yes, there's economy, there's insecurity, and there's all other things. But the point is, please show us your plan so that we can negotiate together. We can talk together. And France will come begging cap in hand. America will come begging cap in hand. You understand? That's the position we want to see Africa. Not the one that goes for AIDS, the one that goes begging. Let them come and beg us. We have what it takes. All we need is for leaders to come together and then discuss. Simple.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Peter Ibuato. Let me get back again to Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu. It's becoming, a bigger issue. The issue is not just Nigeria, it's bigger than Nigeria now. How would you say that ECOWAS should conduct its affairs going forward? That's assuming that, the disintegration doesn't happen, assuming that ECOWAS does not become less significant than it is at the moment, that the 3 or 4 countries decide to stay put and then work with ECOWAS. How should ECOWAS conduct its affairs going forward?
We have to be very clear about this, and whatever we do from now onward will show whether ECOWAS will endure or ECOWAS will disintegrate. We're saying that there is a new patriotic fervor in Africa, a patriotic fervor that is driving countries away from their traditional colonial masters into the fold of trade partners that are not interested in what is happening in their countries, other than the benefit trade will confer on both countries. And that is the beginning of wisdom for any country. We've seen that with the Chinese. The Chinese looked at history and they came with what they call win-win situation. The Chinese is not concerned about human rights in your country. They are not concerned about how you win your election because they are not going to interfere. They are not going to support one group against the other. There will be no divide and rule. They stay clear. You finish your election, they follow you with business proposal, and they strike a deal, and business ensued. That has ensured legitimacy and open access for the Chinese to the extent that the Chinese are taking over almost 2/3 of the world trade that has been controlled traditionally by the West. And that has translated into BRICS. Don't forget the fact that China is the backbone. China and Russia are the 2 backbone of the BRICS. And what they've done with the rubble now exactly was what they wanted to do with the rubble in fighting the dominance of dollar in international oil market. And that was what led to the war on terror that Saddam Hussein, go and check, go and read this up. It's referenced almost everywhere. Saddam was the first president to denominate the sales of oil in ruble. And that was why Iraq was destroyed. And that is exactly what is going to happen now that BRICS is going towards a ruble. The traditional colonizers who benefit from our miseries, our poverty is their wealth. And now you have posturing. The new posturing among the three countries that are pulled out of ECOWAS is a posturing of patriotism to say that they must benefit from their resources. There is no point that they will earn money. The money will be in France central bank. France will determine how much to be given to them for their budget. France will determine how much they will give to them for social works. France will now determine what will be kept in the vault as savings for them. What sort of a nation will accept that? Will Nigeria accept that? So if ECOWAS want to move forward, ECOWAS must move forward in the direction that the people are craving, in the direction that these three countries have shown that, look, they want to benefit from their resources, that they should not hold their resources in trust. And that is the point I want to come to. I think my brother, Dr. Ebuatu, is trivializing this very particular issue. You need to go.
Okay, the audio of Abdurrahman, yes, is a little bit unstable, but I'm sure he's going to come back to complete his contributions. Now, let's bring in Dr. Emeka Okongwu. You know, you always say read up. Yes, from reading up, I've noticed a lot of things that Africa is now the new bride. Again, because we were before, and now is the new bride. And the superpowers are considering Africa to be the new battleground, because Africa has all it takes. We have uranium, we have lithium, we have gold, you know, mineral resources that hitherto most developed countries, when they gave us independence, didn't know we had it. And now the Cold War is coming to Africa, and especially in West Africa, because most of the solid minerals found in the world is, you know, concentrated in West Africa. And people have said that maybe that is the reason why we have all this banditry, insurgency, and whatever is happening now in ECOWAS. But how will ECOWAS now re-strategize its approach to empowering West Africa and developing West Africa so that we can benefit from what the superpowers want from us? You know, it's a give and take situation here, don't you think?
Well, he just explained the Chinese model. Non-intervention in your political, you know, affairs, but total and complete participation in your business processes. So it's called business unusual. Now, in one word, what ECOWAS needs to do is to begin to do business unusual, which was the intention of the African Free Trade Continental Agreement in the first place. You know, to be able to create this nexus, all right, between countries of Africa. The Trans-Saharan Pipeline line was one of those, you know, programs, you know, again with Niger at the heart of it. Okay, remember that at one point in time, that project got stalled, you know, because Niger was not so sure, you know, that they were going to be comfortable with you laying pipes, you know, from their country, and then you're only going to be, you know, bringing out the spokes after you hit Morocco. Now, in rethinking ECOWAS, we must think like they are thinking in the SADC region. And from my understanding of what's happening in BRICS, the selection of those countries were very critical. Okay, South Africa being the 5th or 6th member of BRICS, central, seated, holding the economy of the SADC region, is in that list. Brazil, being in North America, being very heavy in both aviation, science, agriculture, the supply chain, and all that. And then you have Russia. Okay, then you have China, you know, technically, you know, not only leader, you know, in that their own region, but also, you know, a global leader in both logistics and supplies, all right, production and steel. So it's a complete circle. Now, by bringing in Egypt, inviting Egypt to join, you can now see where that middle is. They have just now formed that tripod or that center or that magnet that they can now start pulling at all West, East, North, and Central Africa. Now, what I think we should do in doing business unusual is this is the time for us to set up, technical working groups. Okay, at the level of the presidency, begin to now do uncommon, diplomatic, overtures. Okay, I'm going to repeat this again. If I were to advise the president, I'll hop onto that jet. My brother, I'm coming to break the fast with you. It's just going to be the both of us. Let's be able to talk and see how I can be able to smoothing whatever rough edges. It could just be private and personal. Now, we need to begin to work from that point of, I recognize that you have capacity, propensity, ability, and most of all, you're human, and we can come onto this table as equals and then see where, we can be able to hedge, our weaknesses to be able to now build some common front that can benefit us. If we do this, one very simple way to do it will be to classify, the ECOWAS region as land. Because that's the key, Haja. The moment we are able to say in this space we have 100 million hectares of land, we can now begin to now disaggregate. If we put 30, 40 million hectares of this land, we can actually start throwing, our waste weeds to feed the blue whales so that tourists can go and look at them. We won't be needing it. If we put X amount into agriculture, then you are now looking at an economic program. And each time people talk about Africa, if you look at the brawn, the human resources in Africa, at 18, most African young men are looking thicker than Victor is, broad shoulders, a lot of strength. But if you turn that strength, that brawn, to brain, you want to know what that would be? So that if we're able to now hone the skills of our people, and AI and a lot of these, new deals have made it a lot easier. So imagine when you now not only have identified these your natural resources, now you're also now aggregating your technologies, you're also now equipping your human capital, okay, to begin to do, the things that other people are doing for us right now. Look at the hat he's wearing. I use that as a typical example, made by somebody who's an illiterate, but not one line is missed.
And a woman?
Not one line is missed. I want you to imagine the skill that goes into weaving what you're wearing on your head now. And then the person's, capacity and depth of intelligence for the person to be able to do this. And they do it in various of styles, colors, and designs and colors. Not one line missing. That tells you the depth, okay, of the capacities we carry in West Africa. So if we do this, I can tell you for certain guys, we will be the lost paradise.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Okengo. I think we should head back to Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu before we come to Dr. Ibuatu to round off his comments on going forward, what the ECOWAS should be like, beginning with, settling what has become a quagmire at the moment.
Yeah. So the president must first of all have the humility to say that even if I was wrong, I needed to take that decision that I took at that moment, and that I couldn't drag ECOWAS back by saying that they shouldn't take the decision they've taken. But after realizing the damages has caused us as a people, as brothers who share the same geographical space, we can work together again to reposition our countries. And Nigeria must begin to work and work earnestly to show that we are not just here to support the luxuries of our former colonial masters, that we are willing to take away and to do whatever it will take to ensure that our people enjoy the wealth they are supposed to enjoy. Go and check our colonial archives. We are still paying people that colonized us, that killed our people, that stole our resources. We are still paying them some amount of money. It's happening across Africa. Go and check that up. So we need to equally reassure these countries that we are going to work as partners. And even in the West, they have a dictum that there is no permanent friend, only permanent interest. So why should we keep permanent? The people that taught us diplomacy said no permanent friend, but permanent interest. But in Africa, we are saying it's permanent friend, no permanent interest. So we have to reverse it to say, look, it is about permanent interest, no permanent friend. And if we do that, then we can key into the Road and Belt Initiative of the Chinese, and we can key into BRICS, because as Dr. Kengu, pardon me, I was referring to that Mr. Otru. If you see the analysis you have given, that is my position. It is even shameful that Nigeria is not in BRICS. It's shameful. As a Nigerian, it's shameful. As a person, it's something that I really take in a bad taste, because if you're talking about Africa, you should talk about Nigeria, and Nigeria must be seen as a global player. But what has been happening, and we have to tell ourselves the gospel truth, Nigeria is being perceived as the custodian of that permanent friendship, but not permanent interest. And because of that, Nigeria is being sidelined in the new economic arrangement that is happening internationally. And if we allow this to happen without us, we are going to be in soup, and the consequences will be grave, because we'll be going down with those fallen empires.
Can you react to that?
Let me start with what he said before. I'm not just realizing that the world is changing, but the most important thing is that you don't go with less power. Summon whatever power you have and go to your negotiating table. Now, apart from that, we will not be talking just about ECOWAS. Yeah, we'll start from home. But Africa should have a plan. 20 years, 50 years plan, and 100 years plan. Because when you talk about Russia, for instance, they started planning a long time ago. Putin started planning Russia a long time ago. He is catching them young, and those people he caught young have become adults now, and they are occupying places of authority. So what is the plan of Africa? ECOWAS, yes, we will start from ECOWAS, and this is an opportunity for us. Our brothers that have seen the light will come to us and show us the light too. Right? That's why we are going back to the negotiating table. Brothers that have seen the light, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, let them come and show us the light they have seen. It's not, you don't take that light you have seen to your neighbor's house. You don't take it to Russia. Russia saw it before you. So let them come back to us. We will negotiate, and we will move on as a bloc. I'm not talking about the economic powers now. I'm talking about what Africa can achieve by working together. If we start working, China, BRICS, this one, that one, what about Africa? Can't we form something of our own and say this is our plan in the next 10 years?
Yes.
And others will key into it.
Indeed, Africa has to sit up for us to achieve the potential, that God-given potential that we have in Africa. Okay, Dr. Peter Obiatu, Socialist Fellow of Institute of Leadership, Manpower and Management Development, and other caps that you. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria this morning. It's been a pleasure having your insight into the conversation. Dr. Emeka Okengu, a development economist, as always.
And food producer.
Yes, as a food producer, as always, it's a pleasure to it's a pleasure. He loves food.
So you owe me.
It's a pleasure as always to have your input.
Let's also thank
interview you, and we also thank Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, political economist, and I also call him my brother. Thank you so much for your insights into the conversation. Nigeria for today. Thanks for joining us. I am Jumma Yusuf.
And I'm Victor Azu. Thank you for your time. We hope you join us again tomorrow for the weekend episode. My name is Victor Azu again. Bye for now.